Disclaimer. Major spoilers are ahead for The Last of Us, both the game and TV show. Go any farther, and you will be spoiled, and that is out of my control. Also, this video was originally made over a year ago as I was dealing with the loss of a loved one and made connections about untimely and sudden loss. So, you'll hear my voice from before my tonsil surgery. Yes, that's why I sound different these days. There is also mostly footage from the games since this was made a year ago. If none of this kind of analysis is your cup of tea, or dealing with who died is not what you want to hear, well, again, there are spoilers. You have been warned.
Not many games, movies, TV shows compared to the wide discourse that was had around The Last of Us 2. I hated it too when I both heard about the leaks and witnessed Joel's death for myself, but over time my perspective on it changed the more I thought about it and moved forward in my life. I consistently had thoughts dwelling in the back of my mind that led to a personal answer. And well, I'm here before you today to say something controversial. Not in the vein of being contrarian or clickbaiting for views, and honestly, I know a lot of people are sick of people talking about The Last of Us. I try to make videos I could go back on and watch with either a laugh, a smile, or a tear. And today's forum is no different as I share my thoughts on Joel's fate and why things happened during and after in a way that I actually mostly liked upon reflection, and how it made me look back to times of loss, specifically with my uncle, and how it affected me and how I related with the events that transpired between Ellie and Joel till his end, and the unfairness, regret, and grief I felt that was genuine from this story in its realistic but unpoetic tonal farewell for the beloved character. It will be a personal essay for me as I discuss unexpected death, unfair circumstances, and how the loss of a loved one isn't what we want it to turn out to be, and how life will carry on. Today, we are discussing why did Joel have to die so early in The Last of Us 2? Going forward, I have to say this is my opinion, and some of you are coming in with unshakable predispositions, and you know what? That's fine. We don't have to see eye to eye on every piece of media. I'm here to share my thoughts on it, how it affected me and my perspective, how I viewed other characters, and how I view a story both as a narrative and a reflection of people being real people and not just characters made to fit roles we are already comfortable with. Also, yes, there is a spoiler in the thumbnail and title. The game has been out for over 1,000 days, and I feel like I could not discuss this video without saying that from the forefront. There are many story elements I will not cover today following the actions of Abby and Ellie. I know y'all don't like Druckmann's direction of the game, the characters of Abby and Lev, or how Ellie's focus on revenge that ruined her development, as well as Joel fumbling into a quick death. Hell, the plot points of a pregnant girl going on supply runs, ascending skyscrapers just to get across small gaps, traveling thousands of miles for revenge scot-free, or there being more human enemies than infected. I'm only here to discuss why things played out the way they did leading up to Joel's murder and some of the aftershock and the characters involved. We spent an entire game getting to know Joel's rough outer persona, how his tragic backstory led to a life of reckless abandon, killing and robbing anyone day to day just to make ends meet and survive the post-apocalyptic world of the cordyceps brain infection, only ever trusting a handful of people while backstabbing just as many tenfold. His brother abandoning him after countless murders to try and join a movement that he thought would make a difference. His only friend being Tess, as he ran smuggling operations with her. It wasn't until the fateful day that Tess died and pushed Joel further to take Ellie to the Salt Lake City Firefly base that Joel's outlook on life changed wildly. Joel losing Sarah clouded the world he had forgotten for 20 plus years, but in Ellie, he felt those fatherly instincts return. They went through hell and high water together and had heartwarming moments that tugged at the heartstrings. Joel executing an entire base of Fireflies to save Ellie from her fatal operation was his way of saving his daughter when he couldn't before, even killing a man he had no idea of knowing was a father. A man, for all intents and purposes, was just trying to do the right thing king and try to help mankind. Abby didn't have a full game or perspective of Joel and Ellie up until that point. She only saw her father's murderer who ruined humanity's chances at a cure. There was a daughter without a father thanks to an armed man killing any and everyone deemed a threat to Ellie. A reversal of what happened to Joel so many years ago. The slaughtering of the Salt Lake City Firefly base was the culmination and pinnacle moment of Joel's 20 years of sinful survival. His last murder set in motion someone else, the very thing that broke him to his core oh so long ago. The events of The Last of Us 2 taking place 4 years later, Joel and Ellie have settled in Jackson, Wyoming. Ellie knew Joel lied to her about the cure and the fate of the Fireflies and what he had done. She grew to resent her surrogate father. For Joel, losing the trust and relationship with Ellie broke him a second time, considering what he went through to make sure she had survived. At this point, Joel was a quarter of a century into a zombie apocalypse, dealing with the infected and the living all the way through. He was now 56 years old. His countless barriers, traumas, hard choices, and shattered relationships had all but mounted for him, and once he had settled in Jackson, easing back caused him to soften, his cautious nature slowly diluting over those 48 months. It was during a run-of-the-mill patrol around their camp's perimeter that an infected horde had attacked. Abby, on the verge of being bitten, is saved by Joel. Seeing a teenage girl in need of help caused Joel to lower his guard even more. After getting to safety, Abby's group, upon hearing Joel's name, immediately attacks him. And this is where the controversy and discourse spur from the early and sudden way that Joel is killed off here. Tommy is knocked out cold. Joel is shotgunned in the back of the knee and held up to be bludgeoned repeatedly. People said it was uncharacteristic for Joel and Tommy to just drop their names to people they don't even know. But I have to reiterate, Joel was slipping into his senior years at this point. He wasn't in his zombie apocalypse survival state of mind like he had been for 20 years. He had settled down in Jackson. For 4 years, he was not on full alert survival kill or be killed mode. He had a teenage daughter that basically hated him for his actions of killing first and asking questions later. While that was going on, he found another teenage girl in the midst of being attacked by zombies. All he basically did was save her and tell his name. He didn't think anything of it in the moment. To him, it was just doing what was right, considering everything that was going on in the area. He was caught off guard and paid the price by not being wary. All it takes is one slip up, one fuck up, and it can cost you everything. We all can't be super badasses, strong-willed, and on alert at all times. Ellie walks in on Joel's disheveled appearance, and she is then pinned down, as Joel is unable to speak to her whatsoever, offering only the sight of his head being caved in. Ellie only being able to cry and watch him die with no response. Joel died like a dog, pathetically and brutally beaten to death with a mere golf club. We all expected a man like Joel to go out in a very different and grandiose way. Dude was a badass survivor that not only survived for 20 years against cordyceps infected, but bands of ruthless, violent, countless people. Dude even single-handedly took out an entire armed Firefly base. Joel had to go out like a legend, right? It only makes sense since every other zombie badass or badass action hero needs that send-off, right? Or at least an emotional farewell and or heroic sacrifice involving Ellie, since he was her father figure. The father figure always has to sacrifice himself. We all wanted more of the same of what The Last of Us 1 laid out narratively, but this time probably with Joel's death at the end. That was the expectation. More of the same of what we have come to know from that story and how stories like that usually end up. One similar experience that ended in a way that is universally acclaimed as a perfect ending for a character like Joel, is the death of Lee Everett in Telltale's The Walking Dead. Many have the thought in the back of their mind, and don't deny it, that Joel would go out near the end of the game in a similar fashion to Lee Everett. But we did not get a Lee talking to Clementine ending where Joel gets 10 minutes of discussion, closure, and goodbyes as he slowly dies talking to Ellie. Joel had 20 years of sins behind him, and many enemies that, if you think about it, wouldn't want him having your kind of storybook ending. In real life, if someone wants you dead, they aren't giving you the satisfaction of a proper death. We have seen the heroic death trope time and time again, but a character we know and love dying in a truly unexpected way, well, that's reality. I know when The Walking Dead or similar shows just kill off a character with no rhyme or reason or unexpectedly, it really pisses you off. But when you're thinking of a post-apocalyptic environment where one of the major themes is how dark, sad, and unforgiving the world and its denizens can be, one fuck up, one wrong choice, and you're dead. He knew that for 20 years, but let his guard down in his 4 years of peace just once and paid the price. He died in a way much like those he slaughtered so many times before in his life. Many view the death of Joel as a giant, disrespectful spit in the face to everything representing Joel and his history, character, and development. And honestly, I wholeheartedly agree, it was disrespectful. But for the circumstances leading up to it, it was kind of a silent atonement for Joel's sins. We might not view it that way, but to the people that were there, that were present, and maybe even Joel himself, maybe this comeuppance was deserved. But we will never know Joel's final thoughts in his last moments. But ultimately, no one saw it coming. Death isn't a gripping, poetic, or thoughtful, narratively driven experience sometimes. He wasn't bit and counting the clock to his death. He wasn't fatally wounded and find a way to escape just to give out his final words before bleeding out. Death can be unexpected, give no time for goodbyes, and can have you questioning why it had to happen and how full of regret, what ifs, and conflicting emotions you would have upon a deeply loved one's death. The discourse of how mad people were that Joel died early in a fucked up manner unbefitting of the man he was for so long. People were confused, conflicted on how to feel, pissed off at the story and world that was now left for you to carry on in without him, and worse off, playing as the person that killed him. For a fictional character's death, it was a larger array of emotions that people felt, more so than any other character deaths I had ever seen. And that, honestly, is how death can genuinely leave people reeling after. More and more, it beats in your head the question of why. All that remains of Joel in the following story of The Last of Us 2 are flashbacks had by Ellie, where we see most of Joel's screen time throughout. Flashbacks are a way of really giving more depth to what has happened. And honestly, when someone dies, all we can do is think back to experiences with them, and that's how any person in grief would do. Memories. It was from then on that the story of The Last of Us 2 would effectively split in two, with Ellie on one side and Joel's perceived journey replaced by Abby's, which of course was the largest point of contention for viewers and players. Following Abby's story, most would say it was an agenda and Naughty Dog going woke that Joel would be overtaken by a teenage girl, despite the fact that most people were expecting to play as a teenage girl already with the character of Ellie. Abby was just a hardened person trying to survive, trying to get revenge on the one that took her father, and a foreshadowing of what Ellie would become. She was a connection I mentioned earlier of someone becoming a heartless killer upon the death of their parental bond, a parallel to Joel after losing his daughter, and then Ellie after losing Joel. Abby being the embodiment of both actions have consequences, and that every person has a story, a family, history. Those Joel killed aren't just NPCs who are made to die and be instantly forgotten. Joel was this monster that ruined everything for the Fireflies, for countless people, dozens of families. He killed a brilliant mind and did so much more heinous acts. And over the course of for years, that manhunt for him and the stories behind him only made the rumors and tales about him seem more monstrous, more grandiose. Abby had her reasons, as did her group. For some, I know it still wasn't enough, and I totally get that, but having a full experience with her depicts the duality of man. They could have made her story a DLC easily, but they did not. It was to show how someone we hate and that committed what we perceived as the worst sin possible in a story has their own struggles, and why Abby would view Joel's death that would be supposedly have meaning in retribution and make up for the loss she experienced. An eye for an eye, a soul for a soul. Joel's death was warranted to someone that felt it was justified. Like many people in the world, when someone commits a heinous crime or even something minuscule, there will be a portion of the population asking, demanding blood. That's just human nature. That's just how some people are. They feel like the answer to the question of why something happened or why someone had to die had to be answered with blood. And that's the major narrative of the game. Both sides relentlessly chasing anger, only for it to not mean shit when accomplished. If anything, it continues a cycle of revenge, struggling to answer the question of why something had to happen and why someone had to die. But ultimately, despite both Abby and Ellie going through hell and high water on their own, making arguably very dumb decisions along their paths with people they are around, the cancer that was their own struggle to get a question of why their fathers had to die would end up making things worse and ruining a life they would never be able to go forward with again. Grief being what consumes them. There's always something or someone to continue living for even when someone is gone. Abby had her group of friends that ended up all dying by Ellie's hand because she wanted vengeance. Purpose beyond hate and dwelling on the past. Abby discovered what her actions did, and even when she lost her friends, she still walked away from Ellie. All of her friends had basically died by Ellie's hand because of her seeking for vengeance. Yet Ellie's pursuit of revenge for Joel made her sacrifice the very things Joel wanted out of his life once they were gone, and what Joel wanted for Ellie. A family, a child, a nice home, a safe environment. She was giving up all of that just so she could get revenge for Joel's death, as Tommy wanted, as she thought she wanted. And this is all in the midst of a zombie apocalypse that was never going away. You know what's funny though? People will bring this up with The Last of Us, is that I barely talk about the involvement of the zombies or infected. But that's the world that the mindless bodies create. Men and women being the monsters we face while these animalistic entities roam in the shadows. Hell, if it wasn't for the infected horde attack at the very beginning, maybe Joel wouldn't have easily helped out or come in contact with Abby to meet his demise. Zombies can only carry a story so far, serving as the driving force of the living in their endeavors until they eventually perish. But in a world of zombie-like creatures, getting the death you want is largely out of frame, much like our world of the 9-to-5 drone-like existence we have. Everyone expected a heroic, into the sunset ending for Joel. The grizzled old man trope training a surrogate daughter against the harsh realities of the world before them, only to perish at the end of the game, was something most, if not everyone, expected and would have accepted. Hell, I thought it was going to be a beat-for-beat narrative akin to Lee and Clementine's journey together in Telltale's The Walking Dead. But to not repeat myself, that is not what we got in the latter half. Now, to take things in a kind of a different direction than what I'm used to with the content on this channel, I'm going to be completely honest. A year ago, my Uncle Kevin passed away unexpectedly in my home. And if you didn't know, he was a large part, if not the greatest influence in me becoming basically a zombie YouTuber. His unexpected, but also expected death due to his battle with alcoholism left a hole in my heart that has stayed quite heavily since. It was when I viewed The Last of Us 2's controversial death scene again through the lens of losing someone I loved that something clicked. It wasn't fair. It was sudden. It was jarring. Despite knowing what was inevitably coming, it was still unexpected. I felt a connection with how Ellie acted within the last 4 years of Joel's life. Uncle Kevin inspired me to be where I am now. He got me into zombies, into loving the lore of stories. However, that secondary father figure of mine wouldn't always be in my rose-tinted lenses. In his last 10 years of life, after losing his brother, father, and getting a divorce, he gave up and resorted to drinking and barely doing anything except talking about the past every single day. I was mad at my uncle for giving up on life, for just basically waiting to go and let the alcohol take him. I lost a lot of respect for him in his final years as he became a shell of what he once was, only ever talking about things he remembered, permanently stuck in the past. The night before he died, he had been suffering from crippling stomach pains and horrible vomiting, but refused to seek medical attention or have an ambulance called. This resentment at his diminished state of mind and body and lifestyle had me say things to him I can never take back. Ellie, in a similar light, did the same with Joel. She idolized the man until she realized he killed dozens, if not almost 100 people for her sake, foregoing the possibility of a cure. She had said things to Joel she couldn't take back, and it broke him, as much as I feel like it did with my uncle. But when I saw my Uncle Kevin there, in his lifeless body, gone on the back deck, after all that resentment and disappointment I had towards him, all those negative feelings washed away in an instant. All I could ever think of from there on out was my regrets at not spending more happy moments with him. The fond memories of him that were all that was left, as most of his belongings were sold off years ago. It was swift. It hit like a truck, and all I could think of was how unfair it was and how it could happen this way. Why? It didn't make sense. So many other avenues could have been taken by him, and as a sense of guilt, me. It was a cold and calm December morning, and with a final sip of coffee, a last drag of his cigarette, surrounded by stray cats that wandered my back patio, he breathed his last breath. His body slunk in the chair, and he went to see his brother, father, and mother again, leaving us behind to wonder why it had to be that way. But that was the reality of it. It was not fair. One day he was here, the next he was gone, with no rhyme or reason. It was not a built-up affair. No preparation to mentally brace for. Uncle Kevin was gone. I didn't get to tell him goodbye. He didn't get a final send-off. He didn't get to offer advice. He did not have a storybook ending to think on. He was just dead. Ellie only got to see Joel in his final moments, where he was basically gone. No words could be spoken in his final state, possibly to show how broken he had become since Ellie had disavowed him, despite saying she might find the time and place to forgive him someday. Joel never got to hear her say she forgave him or accepted him for who he was ever again. Joel left this world only ever seeing her tears of anger and sorrow, and then darkness. Joel's death wasn't that of a hero. It was that of any other person in a brutal environment consumed by the cordyceps and what it turned people into. He had many personal sins and demons he had always battled with. He was trying to live and survive. In his final years, he thought he had done what was best, but in turn, angered the one he cared for the most, alienating the person he sacrificed everything for and leaving him to become a withered and broken man, more so than the one the original cordyceps outbreak had turned him into. Joel was not a hero, and he did not receive a hero's death or warrior's farewell, or even a final goodbye. In his last moments, he could only watch helplessly as Ellie, the girl he had sacrificed so much for and fought for, screamed for him not to go, unable to say anything back to her. Ellie was not given a chance to offer him a farewell, condolences, or even love. Ellie was not given the chance to show that she loved him. Ellie spent all that time beforehand resenting him and showing him nothing but a cold shoulder, and now that she finally sees him again, it's a brutal and unfair death. And that's how death is. It's gut-wrenching, soul-tearing. It makes you think, why? Now, as to what follows that singular word of why, many questions can follow, and they can repeat without an answer. So, my answer to the question, why did Joel have to die so early in The Last of Us 2? is, well, no. But we don't get the comfort of knowing when and where we get to go and how it will happen, and how our actions leading up to that will give us that option. No one has to die, but also everyone has to die, if that makes any sense. Joel's death is a reminder of how quick things can turn, and for it to be so early gives us the perspective of someone existing in the world long after their loved one is gone, or when someone we thought we hated is gone. With The Last of Us 2, we do not get to interpret how someone copes with a death, let alone a murder. We don't have credits to mask that long period of grief or a cliffhanger. We have a full game to explore grief and what it does to a person. There is no filler. You have a whole experience to go through a world without Joel. It's not the end of a game, it's only the beginning. Grief is usually only the beginning when we start with it. Joel's role in the game primarily serves as memories, flashbacks to better times. And that's all we can really get when someone is gone. Now, I realize how sappy and overly analytical this has gotten. I know making the bridge in connection with my uncle's passing might have seemed like a stretch, or me using his death to make video content. This is like a personal diary to me. And I also wanted to show how life experiences can change your perspective on things you once believed were unbelievable. I'm sorry to those that may have been spoiled to the events of a game that came out in 2020, but I felt like the title of the video had to be named this to get my full point across from the start, as that is what people had felt so conflicted on, besides the elements of Abby, revenge, and other things. I just wanted to discuss how Joel's death and what came after really resonated with me in retrospect, and for me to tell you that you never know when someone may go and in what way. It is always going to be unfair and feel just unjustified. And before you ask why someone has to go in any number of ways, before they pass on, show them you love them by reaching out or just saying I love you. Life will continue before and after someone is gone, but in this time of dearing while they are here, make the best memories that you can. That about wraps up this rather intimate video of mine. Thanks for going through the motions and emotions with me, and for those that have experienced loss, I send my deepest condolences and wish you the best in your times of grief. Thank you to my donators for driving me to make videos that I have wanted to make for a while over on my Patreon and here as YouTube channel members. We will be delving into other zombie sequels throughout December, so look out for Zombieland 2, Peninsula, and Romero's Diary and Survival of the Dead. Until next time, I'm Zackass, aka WowSuch Gaming. Stay happy, stay healthy, and as always, never forget to stay wow.